Hello guys and gals, me Muda, and today we're going to talk about some Need for Speed Payback. And you might be wondering why we're talking about Need for Speed Payback. I like to do these videos when I cover upon a game that I see personally in the community getting a little bit of an interesting rap, and frankly a game that interests me. And I'm interested about Need for Speed. I'll give you a little bit of my history for it too. Now, may I remind you, the case study for today, the actual developer for the game is Electronic Arts. Remember three things about Electronic Arts. They love money, they love battle packs, and they hate fucking Galactic Conquest. Invert those three things and EA becomes a sad panda, alright? Remember that thing for the whole video, because that's going to be thematically what it's fucking about. Now, let me give you my history on Need for Speed. I've been playing Need for Speed since about High Stakes, Porsche Unleashed, those games, all the way back in the fucking day. I moved to the point where I could play Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 on a graphic card that would run the game at 5 frames per second, wouldn't even display the cars on the fucking, loading screen or anything. And after that, I ended up getting a fucking PlayStation 2 and playing the absolute fuck out of Most Wanted, then Underground 2, and then Carbon. And then I dropped off the series once the whole Undercover, Pro Street, that kind of stuff kicked in. I played Shift 2 well after release, realizing that I fucked up missing out on some good racing games, track sim games. And I played some Need for Speed Rivals when it came out. I actually traded in fucking Killzone for that game, because, whew, Killzone let me down that fucking year. And ever since then, I've been playing Need for Speed more and more than I ever really expected. And I realized why I played Need for Speed more than I expected. So you have to look at racing games nowadays. You have to look at the top racing games. You have to look at games like Forza, Motorsport, Forza Horizon, again, two separate games. Motorsport is more simulation. Horizon is like simulation / arcadey, open world free roam. Actually a really fucking good game. Probably my most played racing game recently. And then you've got your Gran Turismo, which had a fucking falling out with 6, but they're coming back full force, it seems, with that sport lineup that's coming out. And then you've got Project Cars, which has sort of come out of nowhere, but really has hit hard into the, simulation racing theme, so much so that a lot of people really like it. You got your Assetto Corsa, you got your iRacing, and you have your Drive Club. Now, what are these games most notable for, except slightly Horizon? They're all track racing games. Now, I have no issue with track racing games myself. I really do enjoy track racing games. They allow a great level of customization on parts, allow a great level of customization visually on top with just Forza itself, and it allows you to tune the hell out of your cars. It gives you access to a lot of cars anyway. There's a lot of beautifully rendered cars, and the AI these days are getting really fucking good with these racing games. Again, Forza comes to mind with its Drivatar system. So I have nothing wrong with these games. I do play a fair amount of track racing simulations. I'm getting back into Forza Motorsport 6 as we speak. But what I've been missing out of all of that is that outlaw-style racing that, unfortunately, only Need for Speed is the one that's keeping alive. And Need for Speed is one of the biggest franchises out there. In fact, it's one of EA's top franchises. You can throw Mass Effect everywhere you want. But I almost rate Need for Speed as large as FIFA, as large as Battlefield. It is the pillar franchises of what Electronic Arts has and what they stand for. They have spent decades building this franchise from where it's at, and they've spent tons of money changing it, getting new developers, and new developers always adding new different flavors to Need for Speed, which I believe almost keeps it alive to an extent. Now, Need for Speed has again changed over the years onto that point. You've had so many developers step in. You had Criterion, who decided, well, we're not going to make Burnout games, but we'll make Burnout games in the vein of Need for Speed. And they've done a good job. You had your Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, you had your Need for Speed Most Wanted, which were good games, albeit more Burnout-esque games. And you had Ghost Games making Need for Speed Rivals, which might be a forgettable game, but at the end of the day, it's the most, it has the essence of outlaw racing with cop races, and you have your outlaw hunting as the cops and the outlaws getting away, keeping their multipliers alive. It's that risk versus reward, that utter freedom that game offers. And Need for Speed 2015, as much shit as I gave it when it came out for having that always online functionality, which I believe it still has to this day. I'm not able to check. I play it on the PC anyways, but because it connects to the servers, I'm going to say yeah. Need for Speed 2015 did take me in for a hit. I got the game when it was on sale. It went on sale relatively quick after it came out because I think of that backlash. Bought it for $20, and I absolutely fell in love with Need for Speed 2015. I think out of all the games that I've really played, that game is basically Underground 3, and I love it. I love the customization of cars in that game. I love the car list. I love the fact that it really gets into the essence of outlaw racing at night, street racing, all that kind of stuff. Even has a whole story campaign for just evading cops, for God's sakes. I think that is one of the better games that I've played. out of the Need for Speed franchise, surprisingly. So Need for Speed Payback gets announced, and if you've been looking at any gameplay from Need for Speed Payback, you'll notice that it's more of the run kind of gameplay for Need for Speed. For those of you who don't know what the run is, it's the one Need for Speed title where instead of giving you an open world to play around with, the game went for a more story-heavy focus where you're doing a race from California all the way to New York, coast to coast, and you're racing for money, you're racing to escape the mob, things like that. It's a more story-focused game, and my views on it are a little skewed. I got the game for $10. Some people bought it for $60 when it came out. They would have been burned because the game is literally like 3 hours long. You could actually finish it in a sitting if you really dedicated your time to it. But it's a good game. For $10, it's one of the better games that are out there. It's got that intense showcase racing that I feel Need for Speed really needed to add in. Because a lot of games out there stick to the simulation-esque feeling. I think Need for Speed is the only one still keeping the outlaw dream alive. And the more and more gameplay I see out of this, the more and more enticed I am. What I liked about Need for Speed 2015 was a freedom, but what I hated about it was almost the same freedom too. It was missing almost what I would call a hook. You know what I mean? It was missing that, I guess, Blacklist 15 from Most Wanted, even though that wasn't really a hook entirely. This game, again, a lot of people like to compare it to Fast and the Furious and like to compare it to a Michael Bay movie. And to that, I would like to say what's really wrong with that. I think a lot of people misconceive what Need for Speed is really even about, because Need for Speed isn't about one necessary thing. The game has been bitch-slapped, has been changed so many times that Need for Speed games are almost different games just carrying the Need for Speed umbrella around them. I think Need for Speed just means that there's a fucking car in it, dude. You hit the gas, and you drive, and you drift, and you do whatever you can. For all those people keeping up with what Need for Speed Payback looks like, you'll notice that it looks eerily similar to the run in the fact that you're running down on these nice roads. You got this amazing Mustang GT hitting down the road. You're knocking these people out in these BMWs left, right. It goes all cinematic. You catch up with a truck. It turns out that Keanu Reeves from fucking Speed is driving this goddamn truck, refuses to slow the fuck down. You keep on going with this race, keep on ramming a few BMWs until you eventually board the fucking thing, on the highway. Another character, they steal this fucking supercar, and the game almost has this GTA 5 switching mechanic, where it seems like you just switch characters into another car, and bam, there you go. And I almost kind of find that a really cool mechanic to play around with. I feel like not a lot of games have really taken that GTA 5 tactic of switching players around. I want to see more games kind of do that, so if this game does that, I'd be more and more excited to play it. And that's where it sort of ends. It's a short gameplay reveal, but it seems more of what the run is. Now, I don't know if the game's typically an open world game. It has a mini-map on the corner, but that doesn't necessarily mean a game is open world, especially not a game like Need for Speed. They've always had the mini-maps, and they've always been there to show you turns that are coming up ahead, so you could better gauge, right? But hey, a man can always be hopeful, right? And I think at this point, Need for Speed is a game that works better in an open world format. And if you keep a storyline like this, where it's stupid enough that you're chasing, and stealing supercars like something like in the Fast and the Furious, back when that movie series was actually about cars, not, stealing government secrets and shit, I think that would be a game that everyone would be into. I feel like there's a lot of gamers who don't understand that this is EA developing this fucking franchise. EA is typically the company that really, really loves to ham this shit the fuck in. And I do love it. I love the fact when they do it, because at the end of the day, we have a lot of games that are already about that simulation, arcadey, track life. And we don't have a lot of games that are keeping that outlaw racing essence alive, at least not big publishers like EA, keeping most of that stuff still there. You got the crew, you got all that kind of stuff, but it almost seems like that stuff is incomparable to, say, something like Need for Speed. And I know I'm harping on Need for Speed a lot, because I admittedly can be a fanboy of the series too, because I have played many of their games, and I do enjoy many of the Need for Speed games. So, I'm biased, but hey, everyone's biased to an extent, I think. So of course, while this game doesn't really have the controversy of, say, Far Cry 5, it definitely has left some people split down the middle wondering whether this franchise should go do this route or not. And I gotta say, at the end of the day, you have to understand Need for Speed isn't exactly one game. I think Need for Speed are like 4 or 5 different games all using the same Need for Speed umbrella. And I think seeing what Payback is doing this November, I'm definitely going to be inclined to go pick that game up. Maybe not instantly day one. If it's something like The Run, where it's a linear story and no freeform open world gameplay, then I'm not going to go get it day one. I think then you're missing out on that whole aspect of driving down fast cars down really long stretches of road. I think you're missing out on it, really, because if you add in, like, say, Rivals, that's really something I like doing in Need for Speed Rivals anyways. You can start that game off, and literally within like 20 minutes you were open world racing right from the get-go. Need for Speed 2015, even simpler than that. So I think if this game misses out on it, it's going to be a purchase that's going to be really shaky, and I think at that point the price should probably fucking drop to the point where instantly after release you could be getting the game for like $20, $30 at the most. So, hey, Need for Speed Payback, I think a lot of people need to understand who they're fucking buying their games from, because this is Electronic Arts of all things. Remember, they like money, they like battle packs, they hate fucking Galactic Conquest, inverse those things, and they are they're a very sad fucking EA. But I think Need for Speed Payback, in all honesty, looks pretty freaking sweet to me. But rant times aren't really about that. They're more so about what I think, alongside what the community and you guys really think. So I want to ask what you all really think about Need for Speed 2, and what are your real thoughts on it too, because it's a series that carries around some really stylized visuals that I do enjoy. It's a series that brings that arcadey level of racing that's accessible to get into, and sometimes it's got a scenario that's, you know, interesting enough to sit all the way through, to the point where these are some of the only racing games that I ever really finished start to end as far as their campaigns go. So let me know what you think about it. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, let me know what you thought about this Need for Speed reveal in the comment section below. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.